Estonia declared its independence on the 24th of February 1918 as Russia collapsed on the Eastern Front. However, German troops marched into the Estonian capital Tallinn the next day as part of an offensive to force the Bolshevik government in Russia to sign the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. Estonia remained occupied for the rest of the war. When Germany signed the armistice in early morning of the 11th of November 1918, the Estonians could once again assert their independence, but the Bolshevik government had no intention of letting the former Baltic territories of the Russian Empire, which they had been forced to cede in the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, become independent states. The Bolsheviks planned an offensive to reconquer the lost territories and to spread the communist revolution into Central Europe. The Bolsheviks began an attack on the city of Narva on the 22nd of November 1918, which was quickly repelled by the German troops occupying the city. However, only a few days later the Germans were ordered to evacuate Narva. On the 28th of November, the Bolsheviks launched a renewed offensive from the direction of Jamburg towards Narva and Tallinn, while another force advanced from the direction of Peskov towards Viru, Tartu and Valga, numbering about 12,000 Red soldiers in total. The attack on Narva marks the start of the Estonian War of Independence. By the evening of the 28th of November, the Soviet troops had captured Narva from the Estonian defenders and the remaining Germans. They outflanked the defenders with a landing force near the coastal village of Narva-Jõesuu, forcing the Estonians to withdraw from the city. The next day, the Bolsheviks declared an Estonian Soviet Republic in Narva. In the following weeks, Red forces seized large parts of the country, capturing Viru, Valga, Tartu, and the important railway junction of Tapa. By the end of the year, they stood only 40 kilometers from the capital of Tallinn. During the Bolshevik invasion, the newly proclaimed republic had almost no forces to speak of, only a few poorly equipped militiamen. The Estonian government reached an agreement with Baltic German leaders to form a Baltic German battalion. They also managed to secure weapons from Great Britain, loans from Finland, and volunteers from both Finland and Sweden. Later, a Danish volunteer corps arrived to join the struggle. On the 23rd of December 1918, Colonel Johan Laidoner was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Estonian Armed Forces. 3 days later, on the 26th of December, the British Navy intercepted a Soviet naval force outside Tallinn, capturing 2 ships that were handed over to the Estonians. By early January 1919, Estonian forces were able to stop the Bolshevik advance and launch a counteroffensive on the 7th of January by effectively coordinating infantry, cavalry, armor trains and landing operations. The Estonian army, numbering around 4,800 men, was divided into 2 divisions. The 1st division under Alexander Tönnisson in the north, and the 2nd division under Viktor Puskar in the south. Despite facing around 6,200 Red Army troops, the Estonians liberated their entire territory in less than a month. They recaptured Tapa on the 9th of January, Tartu on the 14th, Narva on the 19th. After defeating the Bolsheviks in the Battle of Paju on the 31st of January, they liberated Valga and Viru on the 1st of February and reached Petseri on the 4th of February 1919. The Bolsheviks launched a new offensive against Estonia from Latvia and the direction of Peskov on the 16th of February 1919. After making some territorial gains, the front shifted back and forth until early spring. In May, the Estonians were once again able to regain the initiative. By May 1919, the Estonian army had grown to around 74,500 men. Among them were about 1,500 Latvians, 300 Ingrians and around 300 Swedish, Danish and Finnish volunteers, as well as the northern corps of the White Russians. On the 13th of May, Estonian and White Russian forces launched an offensive towards Petrograd. Another thrust south of the Lake Peipus followed on the 23rd of May, capturing Peskov on the 26th. At the same time, Estonian troops from the Estonian 3rd Division under Ernst Pöder advanced into northern Latvia, liberating most of the region down to Jēkab Hills on the Daugava River, except for Latgale by the 5th of June. In Latvia, the Bolsheviks had captured most of the country but were stopped along the Venta River in the Kurland region in January 1919. During the spring of 1919, the Baltic German Landeswehr and the German Iron Division, consisting of German volunteers, fought alongside a Latvian unit and a Russian detachment led by Prince Lieven, and they liberated most of southwestern Latvia from the Bolsheviks. On the 22nd of May 1919, Baltic German and Latvian forces captured Riga. However, the Baltic Germans were not aiding the newly proclaimed Latvian Republic. They were dominating it. Under the leadership of General Rudinger von der Goltz, they kept the Latvian government under tight control by holding the majority of the troops and blocking the mobilization of additional Latvian units. The Baltic Germans had no real intention of allowing an independent Latvia to exist. Instead, they planned to establish a Baltic German state in the Baltics. On the 16th of April 1919, Landeswehr troops overthrew the Latvian government of Karlis Ulmanis in the port city of Liepāja. The Prime Minister was forced to seek refuge aboard the ship Saratov, anchored in the harbour. In his place, the Baltic Germans installed the priest and writer Andreas Nidra as a puppet leader. After taking Riga on the 22nd of May, the Baltic Landeswehr and the Iron Division decided to march north against the Estonians, sending the Latvian brigade under Colonel Baludis eastward against the Bolsheviks. After failed negotiations about the control of the railway lines in northern Latvia, the Baltic Germans under von der Goltz attacked an Estonian armor train on the Amata Bridge on the 5th of June, and forcing a Latvian brigade under command of the Estonian 3rd Division from the city of Cēsis on the 6th of June, igniting the Landeswehr War. The Estonians failed to retake Cēsis, and a ceasefire was negotiated with a mediation from the Entente on the 10th of June. However, on the 19th of June 1919, the Baltic Landeswehr and the Iron Division launched a new offensive against the Estonians and the Latvian brigade, along a 100-kilometer front from the Gulf of Riga near the town of Limbasi to the village of Rauna east of Cēsis. Despite ferocious German attacks breaking through some parts of the front, the Estonian army was able to hold their position, bring in reinforcements and start a counter-offensive on the 22nd of June that liberated Cēsis on the 23rd of June 1919. In the next few days, the Estonians and their Latvian allies advanced towards Riga, reaching its suburbs by the beginning of July and reaching a peace agreement on the 3rd of July 1919, mediated by Allied representatives. In mid-June, the Bolsheviks struck back against the Estonian and White forces in northern Russia. The fighting continued throughout the summer, and by late August the Estonian and White Russian troops had withdrawn back into Estonian territory. A new offensive by the White Army under the command of General Yudenich started a new offensive in the beginning of October against Petrograd, which reached the outskirts of the city on the 20th of October 1919. However, the Soviet War Minister Leon Trotsky arrived in Petrograd with an armored train and fresh troops and launched a counteroffensive on the 21st of October. By the 20th of November, all White Russian and Estonian forces had been forced back to Estonian territory, as the Estonians did not trust the White Russians. Yudenich was disarmed after they reached Estonian territory, and the Red Army again stood at the border of Estonia. Peace negotiations between Estonia and Bolshevik Russia began on the 5th of December 1919 in Tartu. To pressure Estonia into accepting Russian terms, the Red Army launched a large offensive against the Narva River. Throughout December, Soviet forces attacked the Estonian defenders relentlessly. The fighting around Narva was described by the international press as Estonians were done. It was far from certain that the young republic would survive as an independent state by New Year's Eve. Despite suffering heavy losses, the Red Army achieved several breakthroughs. Yet the Estonian troops fought back fiercely, retaking lost positions in brutal battles around the villages along the Luga and Narva rivers. On the 27th and the 28th of December, the Bolsheviks renewed their assaults, but the Estonian army held firm. An armistice was signed on the 31st of December 1919, coming into effect at 10:30 a.m. on the 3rd of January 1920. A final peace treaty was concluded in Tartu on the 2nd of February 1920, with the Bolshevik government formally recognizing Estonia's independence. Within borders slightly larger than today's, including Ivangorod north of Lake Peipus and Petseri and Isborsk to the south. According to the exhibition at the Laidoner Museum in Vimsi outside Tallinn, which I myself visited in August 2025, Estonia lost 5,720 military dead, 15,000 wounded, 670 prisoners of war, and 680 civilians. Most civilians became victims of the Red Terror. The Red Army lost 10,000 dead, 25,000 wounded, and 15,000 prisoners of war during the Battle of Cēsis against the Baltic German Freikorps. The Estonian army lost 7 officers and 103 soldiers killed in action, and another 9 officers and 272 wounded between the 19th and the 23rd of June 1919, and the German casualties was estimated at 274, according to Nikolai Riek, the Chief of Staff of the Estonian 3rd Division.